When I first went to Detroit, my expectation was that they were going to kneecap me, bonk me on the head, and then steal my bike. But my experience couldn't be further from that expectation. Now, I'm not claiming to be an expert on Detroit or cycling in Detroit. I've only ridden there once in my entire life. It was just a 10-mile ride at night with the Detroit Critical Mass. But I did learn a lot through that experience, and Detroit is a severely underrated town that deserves a lot more respect than it gets, especially when it comes to cycling. But speaking of things that I am an expert on, this video is sponsored by Wabi Cycles. Stick around until the end of the video to learn more about them. Between the news, Eminem, and even my friends memeing that I'm such a badass for even stepping foot in Detroit, Detroit has a terrible reputation that would lead people that have never been there to believe that the entire city looks like a post-apocalyptic Mad Max scene. The thing is, when it comes to cities, it's extremely difficult to make these sweeping generalizations one way or another because there's so many different neighborhoods, there's so many different pockets of cities, and you can't just generalize an entire city into being dangerous or safe or bougie or expensive when there's an entire metropolitan area of millions of people. Back in February, I went to Detroit to ride with the Critical Mass crew. My girlfriend and I parked the car in what seemed to be a renovated neighborhood. And later I was told that that neighborhood was really rough in the past, but they really spruced it up and made it a nice place to be. This is all at night, mind you, and I'm standing next to my car and putting the bikes together so we can go for a ride, and a guy from one of the houses comes out and says, "Good evening" to us. And I ask him, hey, is there anywhere nearby that we can use the bathroom? And he very welcomingly and friendly points us in the right direction where we can go empty our bladders. When I first got into that neighborhood, I felt pretty unsafe. I didn't know what to expect, hearing all the horror stories that come out of Detroit. But going there and actually being there and interacting with a resident there, I felt completely at ease and like I was in no danger whatsoever. Like any city, Detroit has its safe parts and its dangerous parts, and maybe Detroit has more dangerous parts than others. I personally have not seen them, but just like any city, you gotta know which neighborhoods to go to, which neighborhoods to stay out of. For being the city that essentially invented the car and popularized the car and shaped the way the entire United States looks like today with infrastructure, Detroit has a surprising amount of bike infrastructure that I totally was not expecting. Detroit's in Michigan. In the Midwest, they joke, oh, there's 2 seasons, winter and construction. Detroit is no exception there, except maybe they're not always doing construction on the roads during construction season. And a reason for that is Detroit's population isn't what it used to be. It's decreased significantly in the past 40, 50 years or so. Basically, they have a lot more city than they have the money to maintain. At around 6:30 to 7 p.m. at night, there was pretty much nobody out on the roads, and we had the entire roads to ourselves. There's also a lot more bike trails in Detroit than you think. Just on a short 10-mile ride around the downtown area, we rode through a significant number of bike trails that I had no idea existed in Detroit, and would even give some cities in California a run for their money. And talking to the locals that were born and raised there, it seems that the bike trails and bike infrastructure that they're building in the city is something that's been happening in recent years. Detroit seems to be paring back from the suburban sprawl that they built during their golden era into a more reasonable, compact city that's appropriate for their population. And with that comes a lot of bike infrastructure because cycling makes a ton of sense for a more compact city. The biggest thing about the bike infrastructure that surprised me, though, is the Lexus, yes, that Lexus Velodrome. Velodromes are extremely rare in the United States. Anywhere that you can ride a track bike and the track is gold, let alone an indoor-ish velodrome. It's pretty much in a big circus tent. And the velodrome is super active. They have events and races multiple times a week, and they have beginner races and programs for everybody from children all the way up to elders to help them get certified so that they are qualified to race on the velodrome. And it seems like the track racing community only continues to grow in Detroit. One thing that I found interesting is that the track is a smaller track at only 1/10 of a mile, making the turns much tighter and the races more action-packed. If I were staying in Michigan for a few more months, I would definitely move to Detroit because it seems that the cycling scene is really been popping lately, and I would definitely get my bike or a rental bike out on the Velodrome. There's also a ton of places to ride in Detroit. Just in our short 10-mile jaunt around downtown, we started off in a bougie, renovated neighborhood. Stopped by the Motown Museum where a lot of songs that you know, songs your parents know and your grandparents know, were recorded. Rode through a brand new park on the river. Went on a dedicated pedestrian and bike trail on the river by the GM headquarters. Took a downtown rail trail between some really cool old factories to the Lexus Velodrome and rode around downtown, which seems like it's been on the up and up. And that's just downtown. If you want to explore more trails in the Detroit metro area, you can see a ton of green lines on Google Maps for bike lanes and dedicated bike paths. There's even trails like the Macomb Orchard Trail, which is a 35-mile dedicated bike path through apple cider country. There's the Paint Creek Trail, which is the first rail trail in Michigan for an 18-mile gravel grinding loop through the woods. And if that's not epic enough for you, for the past few decades, Michigan has been working on the Iron Bell Trail, which is a 2,000-mile long network of bike trails that goes from the heart of Detroit all the way to the upper peninsula of Michigan. And at this point of recording, it's about 70% complete. And if you're looking for some more great Michigan rides, check out the book Rail Trails, Michigan and Wisconsin, linked in the description. On top of that, it seems like there's a ton of cycling events. You can ride on the bridge that connects Detroit to Canada. Forgot the name of the bridge, here it is. There's tons of velodrome races, and of course I gotta shout out Detroit Critical Mass for being such a great host and showing me around town. And it seems like there's a ton of effort being put into making cycling infrastructure better because it just makes sense for the size of the city that it is today. And even in just my short 10-mile ride that I did there, I already saw a lot of the efforts that they put in with new bike trails and new parks and new non-motorized areas. I could pretty happily live in downtown Detroit for how bike friendly it is, which is really eye-opening because anybody that hasn't been to Detroit has this idea of Detroit that, quite frankly, isn't fair. It's a town that's made a lot of progress, especially when it comes to cycling. Let me know in the comments if you are from Detroit or have been in Detroit in recent years and what it's like to bike there. Let's keep the discussion going in the comments below. I travel around a lot with my bike, and because of that, I can only have one bike. And the bike that's so good that it's the only bike that I own is my Wabi Special. Wabi makes all their frame sets out of top-tier Reynolds 725 or Columbus Spirit tubing, which makes their steel bikes lightweight, lively, responsive, and gives you a lot of feedback when you ride, which makes them a ton of fun. It's the only bike I have because it's the most fun bike I've owned. And if you want to cop yourself a Wabi Special, they are in stock right now. And if you're looking for their most popular model, the Wabi Classic, they are at the shop. They are putting them together. If you order one right now in late April, they will get to you in about late May. And the Wabi Lightning, which is constructed out of Columbus Spirit tubing, which is some of the lightest steel tubing on the market, those are in stock as well. Be sure to check out Wabi Cycles, linked in the description. With that, give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, or give it a thumbs down if you don't. Remember to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss out on fixed gear and cycling content just like this. And remember that life is short, but don't make it shorter, so be sure to ride your bike every day to be reasonably dangerous.